Welcome to the October 28th meeting of the Law Committee. Thank you all for being here. Has anyone had a chance to review the minutes from last meeting? Oh, here you go.
Take a motion.
All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Minutes are approved. I'd like to start with the items that have been tabled for this evening. We have items, essentially 1 through 11 have been tabled. Does that ring true with anyone here? All righty. Also tabled items 13 and 14. 13 is not tabled. I take that back. 14 has been tabled. Okay. And I'd like otherwise to start with item 13.
What about 12?
Gil has an appointment we're trying to get him.
Oh, okay, sure. Anything for Gil.
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
Of course.
Come from the hose and leave it.
Would you like to say a few words?
No, I have nothing to say other than I'd like to get this put out with or without recommendation. Is it material to me? I just want it out on the floor so the complete legislature needs to make a decision. If you have any questions about it at all, I refer all questions to our attorney down there. I'll not answer any question, only to the fact that I don't want to get any arguments. I want you guys to be really harmonious on this whole thing. It's really it's
What does it do?
That's it.
What does it do? I'll make a motion, move it, favorable recommendation.
What exactly?
Yeah, can you just tell us what
Sure.
this does?
Sure, I can, I'll fill
In a
them.
harmonious way.
I'm all about harmony. So basically, as the members of the committee and our legislature broadly will probably agree, over the last year and a half or so, and even before that, there's been some confusion in terms of our rule, specifically Rule 23, and how the 60-day clock is computed. The first thing that this amendment does is clarifies that when we're looking at the 60 days, counting the 60 days in which an item has to be moved out, you don't count days that the sponsor voluntarily tables themselves. In other words, it's a hostile tabling which triggers the 60 days running. So that's the first thing. The second thing that the amendment does is it clarifies the circumstances under which the committee can hostilely table an item, and that is they have the prerogative to do that if they have not previously hostilely tabled an item, or if there is some legal infirmity or other procedural infirmity with the resolution itself. So Gil put those changes in, and that's essentially what it does. It's intended to clarify the rule to head off any confusion in the future. Gil, did I miss anything?
No, you're right on target.
We have
You
a
did a fine
motion.
job.
Okay.
I'm glad you're my attorney.
Thank you, Gil.
We have a motion to move with favorable recommendation, and we have a second already. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee, for being harmonious.
Very harmonious.
I'm going back to God's country now, Chairman.
I'd like to invite our clerk, Mr. Hidley, so we can address items 24 and 25, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I'd like to be very harmonious with you too tonight, if that's okay.
If this gets any more harmonious, I won't recognize it.
Are you from Cohoes?
No. But we in Watervliet like to be harmonious also. So which item are we addressing first, Madam Chairwoman?
24, please.
I don't have an agenda in front of me, so
Oh,
I'm not
sorry.
sure.
General code.
This
General
is the
code?
agreement with General Code LLC.
Thank you. So, as all of you know, we've been working on the codification project with General Code. We are so close to completing Phase 2 that this particular term of the contract expires, it has already expired, actually, October 26, 2019. So I'm here today before the Law Committee to request respectfully that you allow General Code one more year and allow us to continue from October 26, 2019 into October 25th, 2020. And we're figuring that it's not even going to take 1 year, but we've asked for 1 year to just in case there was any problems when we actually have the review of the codification project, Phase 2. So that's about all I can give you on that.
All right, any questions, Mr. Bergeron?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Bruce, we talked a little bit about this at the budget hearing.
Yes, we did.
What are you contemplating as a contract amount for this?
I have, in the 2020 budget, I have $30,000 to finish this project.
So $30,000.
I'm sorry, $20,000.
20.
I knocked it down 30,000.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because you told us 20,000.
Yeah.
So, am I correct to understand that the project is literally done, and that the $20,000 you anticipate could be used for maintenance for, after the
Well,
January?
like I told you in the Audit and Finance Committee, I don't know what to expect. And once the codification project is completed, which is why I requested $20,000 in the budget, that way there, I'm sure that I'll have enough money to get us through 2020 with any of the amendments that need to be made through the legislature and any of the maintenance fees that
Okay.
we're going to have.
So, well, that's what I was trying to get at. So some component of the $20,000 is to finish the project and to get the thing up online.
That's correct, Mr. Burgo.
And then some other part of the $20,000 hopes to cover a contract for maintenance through the end of 2020, so that every time the legislature has a meeting and the code changes, we
That's also correct. We
update
can get
it.
it done immediately.
Okay,
There's no
so,
wait time.
so hopefully this is the end of Phase 1 and the beginning of the, take us through 2020.
Right, Kevin, what was the review time? 90
Sure,
days?
so it's, the process with E-codes, and they're doing a great job, but it's a little onerous. It's a lot of back and forth. If you'll recall, in July, Brandon, myself, and Bruce submitted the full package of all of the resolutions and local laws over the last 50 years to E-codes. From July to October, E-codes reviewed that whole package, checking for any legal issues, any omissions that we might have not had in that package. They sent it back to us recently. We approved everything that they had and confirmed anything that was missing. Now we're well into Phase 2, Paul, is where I'm going with this. But the next step is for E-codes to actually create a digital manuscript of the resolutions, which early next year we expect. They're going to get over to us. We have a 45-day period to review if there's any changes we want to make. Once we approve that, they then have 45 days to actually turn it into 12 hard copies of the code, as well as get everything finalized digitally. So once that's done, the final step is we're going to have to pass a piece of legislation authorizing the final piece, which is putting that up online. So as Bruce said, we're early next year, March, April is what it's looking like for being finally done with Phase 2. But we're well into Phase 2. We're more than halfway into Phase 2.
Okay, but what I also heard him say, and correct me if I didn't hear it correctly, was that we anticipate that the $30,000 that he has budgeted.
20.
20.
20.
Is going to carry us from
Yes.
now until April.
Yep.
And then any maintenance that we may need
Yes.
between April
April and the end of the year.
and the end of the year.
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions on 24?
Second.
There's a motion to pass the favorable recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 25.
Item number 25 is I'm seeking, respectfully requesting your permission to accept a local government records management improvement fund grant This grant is for $149,947. It's a shared services grant with the town of Colony. Now, what's going to happen is the town of Colony will be digitizing all of their town clerk records, and the Albany County Clerk's Office will be digitizing all of its pistol permit records that we have here in my office and at the Hall of Records. This is a tremendously huge step. As you know, we have been authorized 2 other grants in the past with the City of Albany, and we digitized their records and did it very successfully. So we feel that this Local Government Records Management Improvement Fund grant will help the town of Colony greatly in their town clerk's office and Albany County with our pistol permit records.
Any questions, Mr. Griffin? Motion? Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank
Thank you,
very
Madam
much.
Chairwoman. Thank you.
Oh, Joanne, you brought the snacks, right? I was promised orange slices.
If we could, please, let's turn to item 26. Mr. Connors, if you're... Hello, how are you?
This is my Deputy Director, Colleen Breslin. Thank you for allowing me to appear today. This award is a culmination of over 2 years of work and multiple submissions to New York State from the county and the probation department. Our Raise the Age first submission was in late 2018. We thought the process was going to move much faster, and it was added to the 2019 budget. The county overall plan was just recently approved late summer 2019 by New York State budget. And although the county plan was approved, it still did not approve the probation plan. The probation plan needed to be vetted by New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services, and it's recently been approved by DCJS. They will administer the probation side of the Raise the Age grant. So if I can go back historically on Raise the Age and juvenile delinquency, where we're at with the probation department. So on October 1st, 2018, 16-year-olds were increased to juvenile delinquents, no longer considered adults. And October 1st, 2019, 17-year-olds were increased. And it also added a new court, an adolescent court. So the probation department is involved in the entire juvenile process after arrest and appearance in AO court. So when a juvenile is first arrested, they must appear at our department, and we conduct a preliminary intake review. More serious cases, felony cases, go directly to AO court. We still meet with the juvenile and their family. We offer voluntary services while they're at court. Most of the court cases, after arraignment, are still released to us for continued monitoring and services. So prior to Raise the Age, we served between 300 and 400 juvenile delinquencies a year. Our Raise the Age numbers are predicted to double an additional 400 youth or greater once full implementation. During the first year of implementation, October 1st, 18 to October 1st, 2019, 147 16-year-olds were arrested in Albany County, and 48 of those were AO, and the probation department played services and added programming to almost all of those children. Just recently, October 9th, 17-year-olds were added, and we've had about 20 additional cases of 17-year-olds since then. So the Raise the Age money provided from the state would provide for two additional juvenile units for the probation officers that would provide intake services, meet with the family, the child, provide supervision, monitoring, and additionally programming for the children. And the money is sequentially available as Raise the Age continues to move forward to full implementation. So some of the programs that we're expanding our community services program, our juvenile evening reporting centers. We have reporting centers for children at LaSalle and St. Anne's. We'll also be expanding our juvenile accountability board. Some of our other programming is Career University. These are all evidence-based programmings that provide services to children and their families. Some of the new programming that we're going to add was the electronic monitoring, actual GPS bracelets that the child wears, and the court will know where they are at all times. We're adding a couple new evidence-based programs, Girls Circle, Boys Council. We've already sent staff for training on that. We're ready to go. Another program we're adding is called MST, Multi-Systematic Therapy. Would be a very intensive programming that the child and her family would undergo. We'd have to contract with an outside agency to provide that. We'll also be adding mentors, community coaches, peer advisors, incentives for children. To be honest, it's been very busy this last year. I know we had a lot of children come in, and it's some children that we anticipated. I thought we were going to have the money available much sooner. We had to rearrange a lot of duties, push scheduling farther out to meet with families to accommodate the need. But hopefully, once the grant's in place, we'll be able to continue hiring and add the probation staff that we need for this.
So we're on number 28, just for the committee members. There was a little bit of a mix-up.
I think the numbers were wrong on the packet,
Yeah.
right?
So we're on number 28, just to clarify.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you need to come back?
Not again.
Any questions for Mr. Connors on item 28? Mr. Bullock?
Yes.
On Raise the Age, we heard a pretty different report from District Attorney on the influx of work that you'll have on Raise the Age. Do you have any estimates of the influx, the increase workload?
Well, Raise the Age, there's two things. There's bail reform coming. I'm ready to address that if you want to tonight.
Yeah.
Bail reform?
Both.
Okay, Raise the Age, we anticipate up to 400 additional youth going to be served by the probation department. These are all kids that were previously considered adults and are now juveniles, 16 and 17-year-olds. In the past, they had went to jail or state prison. Now they're going to be handled as juveniles in either family court or adolescent court, and they can only be detained in juvenile detention centers. Okay? Bail reform is different. It doesn't include Raise the Age, but bail reform. Bail reform, up to 90% of all persons that are arrested are going to be released. And there's two components to bail reform. The first component is if it's a misdemeanor, the person gets to choose the impact upon us. There's impact to many different agencies in the system. The impact to us. So the person will get to choose their method of communication. So they're reminded to go to court in the future. They can choose email, text, regular mail, telephone, and then an agency to be determined would contact them to remind them to go to court. The second part of it that could impact us, they could be released under some type of supervision or monitoring, including GPS monitoring, which could be expensive in the long run, yes.
If I may add, Madam Chair, Mr. Bullock, Raise the Age has a funding mechanism provided by the state. Incremental costs, if approved, would be reimbursed for. Bail reform and other aspects of the criminal justice reform do not have the same.
So it is automatic, okay.
Yeah, bail reform is, or I'm sorry, let me get mixed up. Raise the Age is 100% reimbursement from New York State, yes.
That's what I want, okay.
Mr. Bullock?
Commissioner, I'm not sure what page it is, but on the summary of the chart for the grant funds where it says $1,548,177, it says project period 2 years. Is that the total amount of funding that you anticipate getting over 2 years?
What was that number,
1.548.
Here's what happened. We initially came up with the service program that we need, and we've had multiple applications that we submitted. Each time the state didn't like it, they told us to go back and redo it. And along the line, they made us change the funding stream on part of the money. So in my 2020 budget, there's been money shifted from Raise the Age revenue into DCYF revenue, which comes in a funding stream called STIP, supervision and treatment to prevent offenders from being placed. So basically, they took some money from a different stream and made us take it from another source, but it's the same amount, same total, almost $2 million.
So it's $2 million. But my question was, it says the project period is 2 years.
It is a 2-year grant, yes.
So it's a 2-year grant. What happens in year 3?
It's my understanding it's going to be renewed. They've already told me it's going to be renewed. It'll be continuing to be renewed. This is money that's going to be 100% funded for the entire length of the program.
That's what the state's told you.
Yes.
Okay.
Any further questions on item 28? May I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Pierce, second by Mr. Bullock. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
I'm a little bit.
Go to the Public Defender's Office for item 27, please.
26 is this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request that the county accept a recurring non-competitive grant from the Department of Criminal Justice Services. This has been a $45,200 per year grant. The state reduced the total grant statewide by 5.5%. So this year, they are proposing to distribute to Albany County $41,508. This revenue goes to pay felony level staff, attorneys and investigator, not the entire salary, obviously, portions of the salaries, a confidential secretary, I think I said an investigator, and it has been in place for several years. We're just asking that the county accept the revenue this year. It goes from October 1 through September 30.
Any questions? Yes,
Motion.
Second. That was quick. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Good job.
Item 26, please. Yeah, use and operation regarding the Capital District Juvenile Security Detention.
One second, Madam Chair, he's on his way back. He was confused at the 28-26 thing and walked
Sorry.
down the hall.
It's a little confusing how the numbering.
Sorry, Madam
about
Chair,
Not a
the
problem.
numbers on the agenda got me all twisted. Which one are we on now?
26. Give me the title. It's the use. I don't know if it's right.
Madam Chair, are we talking about the lease agreement for CDYCI?
Mike, it's actually the other one, the use and
Okay,
operation.
sorry.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, so, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Albany County needs to enter into an agreement with the CDYCI, Capital District Youth Center Incorporated, as well as the other member counties of our consortium for the operation and use of the juvenile detention facility, which is located over by the Albany County Correctional Facility. This agreement governs the interactions between the counties, how the board is run, the legislature has appointments to the board, and all of the interactions between CDYCI, which is the nonprofit entity that manages the facility through our contract with Berkshire, and the member counties, of which we are a member of the four. I can take any questions. This, I guess I should mention, especially since the question just came up, this use and operation agreement brings the consortium into the Raise the Age time, whereas before Raise the Age, there was just one population. There's now two different populations that are served because the Raise the Age population is considered different under state law than those that are younger.
Any questions from Mr. Bullock?
Mike, there was some discussion about needed upgrades
Yes.
to the facility.
Yes.
since we have purchased the facility, or the county owns it?
We didn't purchase it, but it did revert, its ownership reverted to us. We now have title to the facility,
We have
yes.
title to it. Does this agreement pass any fiscal responsibility for the costs of any needed upgrades to the members
Okay,
of
so-
the consortium?
The capital investments in the facility will likely need to be borne by the county unless we are able to utilize DASNY to finance the capital construction. We are in conversations via CDYCI and the consortium with DASNY to try and develop financing through them. The problem is that upgrading the current facility would be a relatively small project on DASNY scale. And therefore, they're trying to wait to get an idea of all of the juvenile detention facilities across the state to bundle them all together so that they can have one big project, I'm assuming just to make their books a little bit easier to manage. So, if not, it would likely have to be handled by Albany County. There is a slight possibility that could be handled by CDYCI in the same way that CDYCI floated the initial bonds for the construction of the facility. But bond counsel has generally been telling us that the rates for that sort of thing would be very, very high and would be much more affordable for Albany County to do it alone or for us to go through DASNY if we're able to qualify. That being said, as Mr. Connors mentioned on the last item, I think it was the last item, all of these costs will be, the state has claimed, will be 100% reimbursable upon the payment. So we would have to, if it's Albany County, bond, and then they would pay us on installments according to the financing.
So if it were to cost a couple of $1 million, hypothetically, we would front-end bond it,
Yep,
some short-term
yep,
bonding instrument, and then the state would repay that 100%?
that's what they've claimed, yes.
When you say that's what they've claimed, is there legislation in place to do that?
We have had to have constructive conversations with the state related to getting reimbursement. Up to this point, we have been able to achieve 100%, but there has been significant back and forth.
Okay. In the event that there was not a recap, is there provisions so that the other members of the consortium, you can change your daily rate to recoup some of it, or?
So, prior to Raise the Age, Albany County, or no, I take that back. Prior to Raise the Age, CDYCI had set its rate according to the board. As in, the board, made up of members of the 4 counties, got together and agreed upon a daily rate. It had been doing that since 1992, when in 1992 it was given permission to do that by the state. An interpretation of law made by the current folks said that we are not able to do that. So now, for both the Raise the Age and non-Raise the Age populations, the CDYCI consortium has to go to the state and ask them to set a rate based upon the information that we gather over, I think it's on a quarterly basis related to costs. So we would not be able to recoup that cost via the per diem rate because we can't set our own rates. We would have to either prorate that cost into the justification that we gave to the state to get them to accept that as a legitimate factor in calculating the per diem rate, or come up with a side agreement with the member counties to share the cost. Hopefully that makes sense. Sorry if it doesn't.
It does make sense.
Okay. I've done worse.
I'm a tad skeptical, but I understand where
Well-
you're going.
Sure, I'd probably share that with you.
Any further questions? Is there a motion? Thank you, Mr. Peters. Second by Mr. Heaney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, passes unanimously. Thank you. And I think we have item 29.
Okay, so this is, as was mentioned by Legislator Bergdorf, so after the CDYCI bonds were paid off, the deed and title of the property reverted back to Albany County. So now it is necessary to have a lease with CDYCI just to give them the permission to use the facility and the grounds for the purposes of operating a juvenile detention facility. So this agreement is solely between them and us. It doesn't involve the other counties for the reason that it doesn't need to, but it is necessary to continue the operation of the facility.
Questions on the lease provisions?
It sort of begs the question, is there anything in the lease that, is it like a triple net lease where, but where unintended costs get passed through on a pro rata basis?
I can't think of an unintended cost that wouldn't have been covered by the use and operations agreement, truthfully.
But it wouldn't include capital?
No.
Okay.
Any follow-up questions?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Fine. A second from anyone? Second. Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Let's move to item 12. Ms. Cunningham?
Yep. 12 is the,
Big bags.
yep, the paper bag fee. This has been quite the focus of many public hearing discussions, and I made changes that made sure that it comported with state legislation, and I think it's ready to go.
Any questions for Ms. Cunningham? May I have a motion? Moved by Ms. Cunningham, second Mr. Peters. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 15.
Okay, with the rest of the sponsor, Madam Chair.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Miller, item 16, concerning flavored tobacco products.
I'd like to request this be moved out for vote.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Miller? Thank you. May I have a motion?
Make a motion, move out with no recommendation.
Second?
Why no recommendation?
A lot of people feel differently on it.
Okay.
I'm on board with no recommendation.
I'm on board with a recommendation, but
I'm also on board with a recommendation.
Same.
so I'd like to, well, we
There was
already
a
have
motion,
a motion.
take a vote. Take a vote.
So there's a motion to move forward with no recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
That's,
I'm aye. Can I now make a different motion?
No, wait a second.
You can't,
Now you'd have to, if this
This
passes.
passes.
Okay,
this
fine,
Without
fine.
recommendation. Okay, so all in favor. Can you raise your hands if you're in favor of this without recommendation? I mean, that passes.
all right.
It goes out
Any
without
opposed?
Can I just make a comment, though? For those of us that would have voted with this vote to motion it out with a recommendation, I just would like to be on the record in this committee meeting as having supported this with recommendation.
I agree with Ms. Cunningham
For the
that
record.
I do support this moving with recommendation, but since it's moving already without recommendation, that's the way we're going with this. All right, so item 16 passes without recommendation. Thank you. Item 17, is that also the table, right? And item 18, Mr. Drapers. Table. Thank you. Mr. Touche, item 19.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the local law to bring our county laws into alignment with the state law regarding the energy loan program.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Touche? I'll just take a minute. Thank you very much for coming to observe this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Any questions for Mr. Touche on the Sustainable Energy Loan Program? Okay, may I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Second. Mr. Fine, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Item 20. For the, This is, Mr. Collins, did you want to speak about this?
If anyone has any questions, this is a request, sorry the chairman couldn't make it. This is a request from the Ethics Commission just to streamline their process. The list that is attached to Appendix A was drafted in 2011. A lot of things have changed. So it's just, every year they're going to come out with a new list of titles, send it to the department heads, get it into the hands of the employees that need to file, solely to streamline their process.
And this is the Ethics Commission's request?
Yes.
Okay, any questions?
I make a motion.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Is this with recommendation?
With,
Just checking.
yeah.
All in favor of moving with recommendation?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Passes
Thank you.
unanimously. Mr. Touche again with item 21.
Thank you. This is a request to put a proposed local law out to public hearing. And this is a local law of the County of Albany to establish clean air standards for waste burning facilities. And this originated in the town of Clemens, where a proposal to burn tires as fuel created a controversy in the area. A lot of people concerned about the public health damages large-scale burning of waste products. The town of Cleveland spent over a year studying and conducting public hearings on this and eventually passed a clean air law. People in other parts of the county asked myself and Mr. Bullock to expand this law and create a county-wide law that would do the same thing. And so what this law would do would protect public health by regulating the burning of waste and prohibiting the large-scale burning of waste in industrial facilities. It would prohibit more than 25 tons in a 24-hour period. If a facility burns more than 1 ton in a 24-hour period, they would need to have continuous emissions monitoring. There's pollution limits for emissions. There's requirements for residue management. And this applies only to new waste disposal facilities. So if there are existing facilities that are burning waste products, they would not be affected. And anaerobic digesters are specifically exempted from this law. And so I'd ask that this go out to public hearing. I understand from Mr. Russo that there are some technical amendments that will be needed, but I'd like to gauge
I'm sorry, excuse me.
So I'd like to gauge the public's reaction to this.
Any questions for Mr. Touche?
Yeah, is there any reason why that you have this only apply to new industry and not existing?
Yes, there are some existing facilities, and I think if we try to bring those into this law, that it would be politically impossible to pass any kind of law.
And is that because they're already out of compliance with respect to these standards that you've identified?
I don't know if they're out of compliance or not. I do know that there are some facilities that are burning this type of waste in the county.
And shouldn't we be concerned about that?
we should, but I think I think that we start with this and go forward. And then if we want to bring other things into compliance, we can go back.
Mr. Fine?
Yeah, I also share the same concern with Ms. Cunningham about the existing facilities. I'm curious where they are. Are they at the Port of Albany? And also, I can understand it, of course, it's a more difficult task to start regulating an existing facility, but I mean, if they're at the Port of Albany, there's a lot of people who live near there, especially in public housing, and they're suffering from a lot of these types of facilities, whether it's waste burning or other industrial sites. Is there a way, I mean, could there be a way to have, you know, maybe they're not being shut down, but you know, you had a monitoring piece. I mean, those sites, I think, should at least at a minimum be monitored. I'm not aware of any in the Port of Albany. There's not at the Port of Albany? Well, not that I'm aware of. It's also popular.
Please.
Thank you. So I just want to, and one of the reasons, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Shedd, that we may not, we might need to not go to ones that are already regulated, is that if they've already been granted their permits by the state and stuff like that, they'd be out of compliance with us, but in compliant with the state. So there might be a superseding problem with that. I think as many of us want to probably regulate this stuff, you can't supersede the state in the permitting process. The other question I did have, though, for you was, and that's why new ones wouldn't be allowed, because we'd have our own standards. But then the second part to that is, how would we regulate it? Like, what's the entity that's going to check the air quality and stuff like that?
Well, that's one of the things that we've talked about, who is going to actually do the enforcement of this. And there's some issues that need to be resolved.
Okay.
On that.
Thank you, sir.
It is very technical.
And this is for the public hearing portion.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Also, it's been through the county attorney's office by the locality, to the county attorney.
I sort of share the same concern about the way I'm reading this. These are tremendously complex, labor-intensive, scientific decisions that have to be made. Are the standards here different than DEC standards? Why would Albany County take on the regulation of what is now a state-permitted process with a duplicative process with, I mean, I don't know, who's going to enforce this? I mean, I realize these are issues that may come up at the public forum, but I have those sorts of concerns.
Well, I think the compliance doesn't come into effect until a business decides that they're going to start a new facility that's burning some sort of waste product. And that's part of the business decision. If they're going to use those as fuel, then these are the things that they have to do to ensure that the emissions are compliant with these standards.
Well, the other thing I'd like to point out was last month we voted to give the Controller's Office funding for a updated solid waste master plan, which also looked at all technologies for waste disposal. And would we be potentially jumping the gun, if you will, without knowing what potential technologies exist, and be setting our own Albany county standards. I'm just raising the point.
I just want to clarify, Mr. Bullock, did you say this went to the county attorney's office?
Yeah, the town of Cleveland sent for review to the county attorney.
No, just to clarify,
Is that-
that's not correct to my knowledge. This has been reviewed by the town attorney in Ravenna. I don't believe our county attorney has had any knowledge or review of this law, so let's just be clear on that.
Well, I'm under the, it didn't go from there.
You're talking about
We
the,
requested a review at the county level.
When the town of Queens
Yeah.
passes this, I'm not sure.
When the town of Cleveland's passed.
I don't know that.
Should we have the county
Okay.
attorney look
Well,
at this?
I'll find
He
out
has
for
not
sure.
looked at it.
Should we have him look at it?
That's the prerogative.
You want to ask the county attorney if he got it? I'm pretty sure they sent it to review.
look at this.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, the county attorney hasn't looked at this law, because this has only been introduced in October. If you're referring to a different law, I'm not of any knowledge that they've reviewed any law in this realm. What I can tell you is they haven't reviewed this law.
You're talking, Doug, about the Queens law.
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't reviewed by the county attorney's office. Why would it be?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Just a second, Mr. Touche, so is the tire burning going on currently?
No, it isn't. No.
Okay, so that's being held off, so this proposed bill would limit a restart of that attempted project?
You mean
Correct.
in Queens?
Yes.
Well, the town of Queens has a law that is almost identical to this. So that facility cannot burn more than 25 tons of tires.
Ms. Cunningham?
So that tire burning facility, they can't operate now burning the tires in Queens.
In Queens, there's a local law in Queens
Yeah.
That
that is
prevents-
substantially the same.
So-
That prevents them from large-scale burning.
And that's because of your local law. So does that mean they could move to Bethlehem and burn the tires right now?
Right now, they could.
Right. So you're essentially trying to take those standards you've adopted at the town level and make them
And make those
countywide.
countywide,
Right.
yes.
So, and these are more stringent standards than what the DEC, the state standards, or the federal standards are. Okay.
Madam Chair, one of the concerns that some of the members of the minority conference have is that there's no fiscal impact statement. So if this was to move forward, I think there would be a presumption by people going to a public hearing that the county actually meant to do this. That being the case, the level of expertise that was mentioned that would be needed, and also the complexities, and even if it would be legal, you need the opinion of the county attorney, because there are, I believe, certain areas here that have been superseded by the state, and actually, this indicates it's going to supersede the federal government, which I find to be interesting. But I would think that that would need thorough vetting before you actually move forward, because otherwise, we're going into a brand-new budget year and could potentially be creating a situation where we don't know what the impact is, and that's happened in the past, and I think our conference members would like to see what that impact is before this moves forward.
I know
This is
Mr.
just for a
Touche-
public hearing.
Yeah, this is just the public hearing. Mr. Touche did express that he wants to hear from the public on it. Mr. P?
Could we request that the county attorney review it, though?
And that just to remind the members, that's got to be a formal request from the chairwoman to the county attorney, and that is a reasonable request, in my opinion, to have this law looked at.
I'd like to offer a motion to move it out. It's just the public hearing. Let's hear what the public says. Maybe there's a lot of environmental groups that will give us guidance and discussion. We're at the beginning of the process. I don't think we slow it down by, offering, this is a public hearing. Let's hear what the public has to say. So I offer a motion for a public
May
hearing.
I have discussion of the motion?
Sure.
I would support moving it out, but at the same time, asking the county attorney to look into it. I'm not saying that he has to have it completed, but it would be a parallel course. It would go out for public hearing, but the county attorney would look at the federal preemption issues, state preemption issues,
Sure, that's fine.
enforcement. Is that,
Can you make that, you have to make the request, and you do that?
I want to hear from Mr. Peters. Did you have a comment?
I was actually going to say we should do it as a parallel path so that we can continue on this, but also answer those questions. So that's all I got.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. I will go ahead and request that opinion as, but let's take a vote on the motion. We have a motion to move this with recommendation for the public hearing.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We have to amend the date as well. The date of this, first, we need a motion to amend to
Motion
November.
to amend to November
19th.
19th.
Yep.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of changing the date to November 19th?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. And now a motion for moving forward with public hearing
So
by Ms.
moved.
Cunningham. Thank you. Second. But thank you, Mr. Fine. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes unanimously, and we request the county attorney's review.
thank you, Madam Chair.
22 is tabled. 23.
23
Ms.
is a
Cunningham.
public hearing resolution for the straws and cutlery upon request. I will be amending this, and I'll tell you exactly how. I'm going to take the county exec's language that offers a ban on plastic straws, and I'm going to import it into the existing language. I will do that in well due time before the public hearing materials go out to the public. And I think I've made good on my commitments prior to
Well,
meet those
you've said what you're going to do. That, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I like the accommodation that you made for stores.
What accommodation specifically?
The one where if it's a self-service place, you can have,
Right,
but you now can't, you won't be able to have plastic straws.
right. When it goes to a full ban on
Okay,
plastic,
all right.
you can't have plastic straws.
I don't know if this is the time to ask, but what happens if you go to a McDonald's and you go to a drive-in window and you order a big breakfast?
The same thing as if you walked up to the counter. Would you like a straw with that, sir? Would you like a fork with that?
They will ask you,
They will ask.
and it specifically says they have to ask?
Yeah, straws, yeah,
You can also request on your own.
No, but I mean,
No, the
most
legislation doesn't say that.
most people in other venues,
right,
when they go through a drive-in,
right.
assume they're going to get a straw and they're going to get a piece of plastic cutlery.
You have
with-
to ask.
with-
I had the same conversation at length with one of my co-sponsors, Mr. Drake. And a lot of people in the drive-through, even if they're getting a hot fudge sundae, do not want the spoon. So yes, you will still have to be offered the spoon. Would you like a spoon with that?
But they can offer, you don't
Sure, they
have to
can offer.
ask.
Sure.
Okay.
They can offer, but if you want a spoon, you better ask. You know? I mean, it's straws and cutlery on request. So I assume any good business who offers a drive-through is going to be training their staff that unless they want unhappy customers, they should say, you need a spoon with that. But you should ask. If you're going through that drive-through and you want to make sure you get your plastic spoon, you better ask. And there'll be a little inconvenience, and then everybody's going to be trained, and we'll figure out that they need to ask.
All right.
This is the wave of the future. This is our world that is coming. I carry around my plastic, my bamboos. I do, I'll show it to you. It's very convenient.
Just point of clarification, because there are a lot of different versions, so I'll await the latest version, but for the author, for Ms. Cunningham,
Yeah.
some of the previous versions could be read to state that the consumer had to ask,
Yeah.
that if it would not be appropriate for the server to ask. So that should be clarified that.
Okay, that is not the intent, that there's a
But then that should be
preclusion
clarified.
on-
So if an individual drives up, the server is not in violation, but saying, would you like? it-
No, of course not.
Could you clarify that in your
I will
amendments?
clarify that. I will also clarify some language, because what I don't want is all of a sudden these self-serve areas to just proliferate, because now the intent of this is to have people consciously think about whether they need plastic who are purchasing something. So that's the intent. So we don't want to see a proliferation of self-serve appearing kind of everywhere that weren't there before. Stewart's right now has that. Cumberland Farms, there's self-service. We don't want to stop them from doing that, but we don't want to suddenly create an additional use because, restaurants that prior, didn't have those. So I'm going to look at the language, but you'll get it with ample time.
Okay,
Mr.
but
Bean?
I'll make a motion to move it
I'd like to, if this is a motion to move with positive recommendation,
for
please.
public hearing, sure, positive.
Thank you,
Feeling
Mr.
very
Peters.
charitable.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. All in favor?
Very
Any
harmonious.
opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We now need to enter executive session, so I would ask everyone except committee members. Oh, I need a motion to actually enter. Sure.
I would like to make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss potential litigation and its impacts upon the county.
Thank you, Mr. Burgo. Much appreciated. Second, Mr. Feeny, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? All right, thank you. We have concluded executive session, and we're ready for a motion on the last item on the agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve settlement.
And thank you, and seconded by Mr. Bergdorf. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much for your.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Peters. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.